Welcome back. We're going to talk right now about nonverbal communication and oral communication patterns. So what is the mixture between our gestures, our facial expressions, our nonverbal communication mixed with our verbal communication? So let's go straight to the slides. And here we go. Chapter 6. So our thought patterns are very much part of the language and part of the nonverbal structures of our languages. So some countries that thought pattern is very deductive. So from broad categories or observations, narrowing to more specific, and then coming to the solution to the problem. So in the US, we go from that broad picture to the solution, and we very logically, deductive method, narrow it down. Inductive starts with facts and observations. So it starts more narrow, and then it goes more and more general, more and more global. And many countries in Asia use an inductive method. Also of concern is the pace or speed in which problems are solved and decisions are made. So in one culture, we may want to deductively go from one thing to the other. There's a PowerPoint, there's this, there's that, here's the contract, let's sign. And in another situation, we may be looking at, well, let's have dinner together. Let's talk. How's your family? And there may even be a circular pattern. So in the Fulani language, when we meet people, we say Onyarama. And the translation is like, may peace be with you. Onyarama. We also say that when we say goodbye, by the way. And then the next thing is Danalaton. How are things? And then you're going to say Bengure Noyam. How is your family? Or is your family well? And then you're going to go through a series of other questions, and people may not even answer. They might just reciprocate. You say, "Begud noyam," and they're like, "Begud noyam." So, yes, and then they answer. So I answer sometimes, and people look at me like I'm really strange because the he is a yes. And it became very much a part of me. So in the Fulani language, let's say there's a pause in the conversation, there's this lull, and someone's going to pop up again with Benguda Noyam. You're like, I just answered that 10 minutes ago. Yes, my family is fine. Okay, but it's like a filler, and it's a very polite filler. Okay, so understanding these, the pace, the speed, and the interjections and what's appropriate and what's expected are things that we really need to understand about the other culture, because you can understand how quickly a negotiation could shut down if we are offensive to the other culture. Then there's paralanguage. So the rate, pitch, volume, qualities of the voice that interrupt. So your intensity, You probably have been in situations where one person speaks very softly and someone else speaks very loud, and both of them are acting appropriately in their cultural context. Pitch, either high or low, the extent, the drawls and accents, your vocal characterizers of crying or laughing. You know, some people, every time they talk, they cover their mouth when they laugh, cover their mouth when they eat. And other people are like, talking while they eat, etc. So again, understanding practices will make you come across as polite or impolite. Your vocal segregates of like I said in Fulani, he, or how you convey emotion. So paralanguage is very important in understanding the cultural context as well. Then you have your chronemics, or your attitude towards time. So a monochronic culture, you do one thing at a time. It's rigid in its approach to time. They stick to agendas. They focus on the task at hand. Accomplishing or finishing the project is most important. They emphasize promptness. When a monochronic culture is interacting with a polychronic culture, we can have some real problems, because the polychronic may be doing multiple activities at once, may be very flexible to time, does not adhere to a strict agenda. They focus more on relationships. Relationships are much more important than the job at hand. And promptness is based on relationships, not on time. So if you're going to be interacting with a polychronic person and you're monochronic, you need to really step back and take a breath and relax. A polychronic person may need to understand that they are frustrating the other party, and they may need to make some adjustments as well. So who does the adjusting, right? I would venture to say it's the party who is the guest. It's the party who wants the results. It's the party who initiated the request. They're the ones who really need to take the other culture into account. And absolutely be ready to make the adjustments. Don't wait on the other party. Okay. Other nuances of communication. Proxemics, the use of space. How close do you stand to someone? That's a very interesting fact, right? In Latin cultures, men will stand very close together. Men may even pick lint off of another man's suit or hold his lapel while he talks to him. And countries where we have much more distance is expected. We have a bigger bubble, bigger personal space. It's very offensive to have someone standing so close. And so that person backs away, and then the close proxemics person steps into your space again. And pretty soon you're up against the wall in a corner and you can't get away and you're freaking out. So understanding those nuances becomes very important. Oculesics, gaze and eye contact. Do you make strong eye contact, or do you kind of just look to the sides, or are you expected to look down? And this could have, this is viewed as politeness, and you could be viewed in a very negative light if you avoid eye contact and the people expect you to make eye contact, or if you're making too much eye contact and people are like, whoa, they're in my face. So again, understand that. Olfactics, smell. The way someone smells remains in our memory after the person is gone. Did it create a positive or a negative? There are some cultures where perfumes are absent. There are other cultures where, heaven forbid, you show up and you're not wearing a strong cologne or perfume. The smell of sweat, okay? The smell of oily hair. Are those acceptable or not acceptable in a culture? Things that you should know. And then haptics, so touch, the communication through touch. So I mentioned earlier miscommunication because I touched people a lot. Does it build trust or does it build annoyance? And again, understanding that is very important. When I was in high school, if people thought I was talking too much, they would tell me to sit on my hands. And as soon as I was sitting on my hands, I was incapable of speaking because I needed to be gesturing to be able to communicate. So anyway, the nuances of the communication, very important for you to understand your habits versus the other culture. And then I can't say that word, kinesics. So your facial expressions, your eyes, your face are the most expressive part of your body, and then gestures as well. So what does your face convey to them is very important. And then gestures. Understand appropriate and inappropriate gestures in communication. So emblems or symbols, the V for victory, the V for victory, offensive in some countries, acceptable in others, the police stopping traffic, regulators like glancing at your watch during a conversation. I don't know which culture that would be acceptable, by the way. The affect displays like turning red with embarrassment or looking down. Your gestures add emphasis or clarity, but they can also be offensive. So understanding that is crucial. And then chromatics, so color. Color affects mood, emotions, and your impressions of others. Color is very symbolic and can have different meanings in different cultures. And even the color of gifts would be very unacceptable if you made a mistake. So I just brought this out as color of wedding dresses. In the US and many Western cultures, a bride wears white, and white symbolizes purity, new beginnings, etc. In China, a wedding dress is red, and it symbolizes love. I looked up what else it symbolizes, and now it went out the window, so you guys will have to tell me. And then I looked up India as well. In India, red is still the color of preference, but an Indian woman can actually wear any color dress except white, because white is the color of funerals. So giving a gift, you do not want to give a white gift in India, okay, because it would be very offensive. Do you give a watch or a clock to another culture? In some cultures, it might be very appropriate. In others, it might be very offensive. So gaining an understanding of all of this, again, very important. So again, as you're putting your website together, as you're creating that, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Think especially like that creative piece that you will be creating, like the cheat sheet for your boss. These are very important things. So I'm going to show you guys later on some other examples of how people have created short infographics that illustrate these things. So anyway, this is the end of chapter 6, and I hope you're keeping up and that you're applying this every step of the way to your research paper and to your website as appropriate.